Going to build a country from the bottom up and the middle out, not the top down. When the middle does well, the wealthy do very well. So this law is about more than rebuilding our infrastructure. It's about rebuilding the middle class, something John knows a lot about and talks a lot about. And let me tell you, I'm a proud Delawarean, but Pennsylvania is my native state. It's in my heart. I can't tell you how much it means to me to be part of rebuilding this beautiful state. My grandfather, Finnegan Scranton, would really be proud of me right now.
It's a huge day for millions of Americans. Joe Biden has made a shocking announcement. Now, this will affect many Americans financially, everybody. The lawmakers have already confirmed that you have another chance to claim a fourth stimulus check. It's the latest breaking news on stimulus payments, so hopefully President Biden can get the stimulus out before next year. But do you believe that President Biden will do this and approve the stimulus checks before it's too late? Well, tell me in the comments down below, because I definitely believe he has to. If you're hoping for a more fourth stimulus check to be deposited into your bank from the federal government, well, you may be in store for a surprise. State governors are stepping up. They're sending out more financial aid to the residents already. And the most recent stimulus payment from the Fed came from the American Rescue Plan in March of 2021. And now, while that was passed a while ago, the Republicans still voted for it. And it shows that some Republicans and Democrats can agree that a fourth stimulus check is necessary. Republicans didn't believe another stimulus was necessary at the time when the law was passed. And with Republicans taking control of the House, it will no longer be possible for Democrats to pass this bill on their own. If they want to get a law to President Biden's desk, they will need to support at least some Republicans and representatives. Although the likelihood of a federal stimulus was greatly reduced by the outcome of the election, it's still possible that some Americans could receive more help from the government. This could come in the shape of a form of an expanded child tax credit. Several prominent Republicans like Mitt Romney have proposed expanding this important type of aid as offered to parents. And since an expanded child tax credit was a key piece of the American Rescue Plan, offering more aid to parents has bipartisan support from both Democrats and Republicans. At least that's some good news, folks, because with control of Congress still split, lawmakers are going to have to work across the aisle if they want to get anything done. Since a larger tax credit for parents is one of the few areas where there is some potential for room for agreement, it's possible lawmakers will work on finding consensus on the issue. The Biden administration is yet again extending the pause on federal student loan, a benefit that began in March to people who are struggling financially during this time. Now, the good news is that this extension comes as the Biden administration student loan forgiveness program is tied up in the courts. Creators have already told borrowers the forgiveness program, now which is worth up to $20,000 in debt relief. And according to the Department of Education, or the DOE, everybody, they're saying this, folks, that payment pause will cause and last at least 60 days after the litigation is resolved. If the program has not been implemented and the litigation has not been resolved by the middle of June, then payments will resume days after that. Joe Biden already said many times, I'm completely confident my plan is legal. It isn't fair to ask tens of millions of borrowers that are eligible for this relief to resume their student debt programs and do this while they're in lawsuits. Last week, the Department of Justice already asked the Supreme Court to step in and reinstate the forgiveness program while the legal challenges play out. The program was struck down by a lower court, and now Biden said the payment pause just gives the Supreme Court more time to think about the current case, and borrower balances have effectively been frozen since then. So with no payments required on pretty much every student, and interest expected to cost the government at least $155 billion. If Biden's student loan forgiveness program is allowed to move forward, individual borrowers who earned less than $125,000 in either 2020 or 2021, and who made less than $250,000 annually can see up to $10,000 in their debt forgiven. That means more stimulus payments for you, everybody.
Hi, everybody. Oh, I just want them to play longer, don't you? Sounds beautiful. Thank you. So, thank you. And gosh, over the last 2 years, I've traveled to almost 40 states, to rural counties and to big cities. And again, the Americans I've met have shown me the soul of our nation, the optimism that glowed on the faces of future teachers in Tennessee who dreamed of changing the world one student at a time. The hope of the gospel songs that washed over me like healing water in a South Carolina church. The gratitude of each new American citizen I watched recite the oath in the naturalization ceremony in California. the empathy of the nurse navigator I met in Florida who understood that no one should have to go through cancer care alone. The resolve of the survivors of loss, whose love for each other is the only thing strong enough to overcome their grief and their pain. And the pride I saw in military bases across this country, loved ones and family members who put their shoulders back and their chins up through every single deployment. I've seen it everywhere I've gone. When our country comes together, we are stronger. What we share is so much greater than the things that pull us apart. The soul of our nation is and has always been we the people. And that is, yes. And that is what has inspired this year's White House holiday decorations.
Checks of $2,000 per family, which will be a political liability for Democrats if they fall. The governor who is running for re-election said the divided legislature should agree to a special session only to approve the checks. Republicans favor permanent income tax cuts this year. And during this year's legislative session, they unsuccessfully pushed to cut the rate in half on the state's bottom income tax bracket. All filers pay at least a portion of their income in that bracket. Since January, Wallace has proposed 3 rebate checks, the check size growing each time. The stimulus checks sent out during the crisis were very popular. Nearly 4 in 5 voters were in support of it, and Democrats rally behind this in Washington. The popularity of the payments and findings that they reduce poverty are being a great tool for Democrats and Republicans this year.
Of course, we're sitting on the largest untapped oil reserve in the world. Amazing enough here in the United States. We've been utilizing this properly instead of launching on an assault on domestic energy production. Our union would be in a much better state. Of course, as we know, on the first day in office, President Biden shut down the Keystone Pipeline on and off over the years, suspended pending oil and gas leases, and halted domestic energy production, which stopped exports on liquefied natural gas to our allies overseas. We've seen how important that is when Europe has become so reliant upon Russian natural gas. Poland recently just cut off supply buying from Russia so they would be able to not be so dependent. The Germans too, other Eastern European countries. Of course, now what we've seen since all this, lack of exploration, shortness of supply.
From strategic reserves, the White House has said that they are supportive of domestic producers increasing their production. Leaders on Capitol Hill have their own ideas and have introduced various